Hey, folks, and welcome to a very special edition of Dawg Walk Talk presented to you by DawgsHQ. As always, I'm your host, Jake Roos, and with me, as always, beat writer Palmer Toms, the man over at DawgsHQ. And folks, it happened. I don't know how else really to start this off other than to say that, but it happened.
And your Georgia Bulldogs are the 2021 national champions.
Yeah. The Dogs pull it off in Indianapolis in spectacular fashion, a heavyweight fight like everybody predicted it would be. And then a couple haymakers there at the end seal the deal for the Bulldogs, and Bulldog Nation goes crazy, essentially. I think that it was quite a moment to be there. I know it was very special to witness in person. I think Palmer and I would both agree on that. Talking to Georgia fans afterward, talking to them since, the people that got to be there, the people who were watching in Athens, the people sitting at their homes all over the state of Georgia and all over the country, and even all around the world watching this one. Just a big night. And everybody with a chance to soak it in. Congratulations, certainly deserved to Kirby Smart, this Georgia Bulldogs team, the Georgia Bulldogs staff. Not really many other ways to say it other than a magical year. And, it all culminates in Indianapolis, 33-18 against the Alabama Crimson Tide. Palmer, I'm just going to throw it over to you, buddy. I'm not even going to come in with some questions. I think we just riff on this one. There's a lot to talk about and a lot to say about it. And I'm just curious, your feelings, what you've heard from people, what you've seen since. And, now that we've had about 36-ish hours or so, I guess it feels like, to reflect on this thing. Your takeaway from Georgia becoming 2021's national champion.
Yeah, I think it was this is years in the making, and I don't know that I can give the best perspective on that, as considering I haven't been alive for half of Georgia's championship drought. But I think that being around Athens as much as I have been, during this Kirby Smart tenure, I think that, that if you just look at the 6 years of Kirby Smart, you really get a sense for how close Georgia has been to a national championship. You understand that 2nd and 26, Kirby said it, on Tuesday morning as we spoke to him. If you had told him at 2nd and 26 that he'd be waiting until his 6th season to be a national champion, he would have said, well, that's way too long. We're in way too great of a situation now. Why wait till then? Let's win it now. But I think that if you had told Kirby Smart at the beginning of his football career that he would be a national champion 6 years into his head coaching career, he probably would have taken it. Because it takes a lot of coaches a lot longer to win one. And a lot of great coaches haven't won one. Kirby said that he wouldn't have defined his career by whether or not he won one, but he doesn't have to think about that now because he's got a ring to show for it. So like he said, I think that this is, on several different levels, I think that this is an emotional one. It's an emotional one for Kirby winning that first one. It's an emotional one for the players, getting redemption against Alabama, the only team that beat them this season, and in the fashion that they did in the SEC championship game. I think that, that they said it wouldn't have had the same feeling had they gone through somebody else to win the national championship. And so that answers the question that me and you and several others have had all along throughout, since that December 4th ending. If Georgia was to win a national championship and if it was to be against somebody else, would it be as sweet? Definitely not, without, beating the Crimson Tide. They do that. So I think, that you cover the emotions there. And then, like you said, for the fan base, 41 years in the making, the scenes from Athens, the scenes in Indy, there was some property destroyed in Athens, some property destroyed in Indy, and I think that there was quite a bit of property destroyed all around the state as Georgia fans celebrated this national championship.
Yeah, I assume there are some man caves that are still in rubble and garages that are still really, really shattered. And quite frankly, they probably don't even want to pick up the pieces because they're worried about messing with the juju and worried about a reversal on the decision. Like you said, it means a lot to Kirby Smart. It obviously means a lot to the fans. I thought it was really, cool of him. I thought it was a really, really cool thing to hear him. First off, reference Larry Munson after the game, and then talk about all the people that had put so much into this, from Vince Dooley to Lauren Smith, guys like Nick Chubb and Roquan Smith and DeAndre Swift and Jim Donnan and Ray Goff. I mean, he gave a shout out to all of those people and Mark Richt and said, this is for them. And this is, none of this happens without those people and those places and or being in this place that is Georgia. And I thought that was a really, like I said, I thought it was a really cool thing, really touching thing for him to say in that moment. Obviously, he could have gloated a little bit. I don't think anybody would have begrudged him if he had said, hey, look, I'm the smartest man alive and the greatest coach Georgia's ever had. And I think a lot of people would have agreed with him to some degree on that day and night. But, he took that opportunity to be really humble and pay homage, and that was cool. I guess looking back, like we said, the reaction was insane. Everybody went totally nuts. There were not a lot of dry eyes in the stadium at Lucas Oil, or like I said, at homes across the country, I'm sure as well. But let's dive in on that game a little bit. Obviously the elation is still there. The championship parade on Saturday in Athens will, I'm sure, be a scene for the ages. Personally, I just don't think this buzz is wearing off anytime soon for a lot of people. So, we can talk about elation for weeks and months to come. But the game is something, looking back on it and that night, I used this a few times in a couple pieces I wrote about it. And, I wrote about this in 3 Keys after the game. And I'm just kind of interested if you feel the same, Palmer. To me, it felt like Georgia did what Alabama normally does at the end of a game. It was so tight, and then all of a sudden they're just able to start running it and dictating the pace of that game and controlling what's happening. And that's what we've seen Alabama do, just methodically kind of disassemble teams late in the game. It's what comes down to conditioning. You hear that all the time, and all the training and the cardio. To me, it was a very Alabama-esque performance in that game, but from Georgia.
Yeah, and I think Nick Saban would say the same thing, considering that he's caught on camera after the game and his embrace with Kirby and says, "Hey, you guys kicked our ass in that fourth quarter," and that's something that Alabama has prided itself on. It's something that any college football coach prides himself on. Being able to be conditioned, be ready to play a 4-quarter game. Georgia didn't have a ton of them this year. And I think that they heard the noise of, are they going to be able to play 4 quarters with a team like Alabama? They didn't do it the first time. And then they didn't need to play 4 quarters against Michigan. Really, if you think about it,
not at all.
Clemson and Alabama, the second go around, the first and last games of the season are the only ones that Georgia really had to do something in the fourth quarter to seal the deal. And so otherwise the fate was kind of determined. Obviously they had to play 4 quarters to try and make up ground in that SEC championship game. But outside of that, you didn't see Georgia's best football played in the fourth quarter. In most of the time throughout the season. More often than not, you were seeing the walk-ons and the backups in there. I mean, you were, how many times this year did we see, Jamon Dumas Johnson and Chaz Chambliss and the second string D line with their backs against the goal line, trying to keep, the opponent out of the end zone to play up to that standard of Georgia's, first team defense. I mean, it was a sight to see almost every week. And so I think that shows to you there that they didn't really play that many 4-quarter games. Well, when it mattered most, they were able to play a 4-quarter game. And honestly, I think if most Georgia fans would be willing to admit, they did not play a great 4 quarters. They played a great 4th quarter. And that's what really mattered. They played well enough in quarters 1, 2, and 3 to keep this game close. Hats off to the defense for everything that they did there. Just looking through these drive summaries here for Alabama, field goal, punt to start the game. I think that if you had told Georgia fans that they would hold Alabama to 3 points in the first 3 possessions, you'd be very happy, especially knowing that first drive took 14 plays and 56 yards to hold them to a field goal there, to not let just the weathering the storm there, and not let that end in the end zone. That was huge. You turn to the second quarter, field goal, punt. I think you're keeping them out of the end zone, and on both of those field goal drives, there was a big play involved, a play of 40 plus yards. Alabama hit on a big one. Georgia responded by playing great defense in the red zone and getting off the field, limiting the damage. At that point, you look at the offense before halftime, punt, field goal, and then taking it into the half. They didn't do a ton of great things offensively. And so I think that for them to stay in this game, the defense had to play well. The defense certainly did so. And, the offense ultimately ends up responding in the second half. After Georgia, ends up, they're down, 9-6 going into the half, that they end up taking the lead and late in the third quarter. And I think that, as you turned the page to the fourth quarter into the third, early fourth, that's when this game was decided. Georgia takes the lead. Alabama responds, and is able to get the lead back, after a controversial fumble there, which, the officiating is one thing in this game. I'm glad that that's not what we're talking about now, because that's not what decided this game. Georgia took matters into its own hands. And after, after the controversial call, after giving up the touchdown in the short field there, they turn things up a notch, score twice on offense with big plays by freshman pass catchers. Defense responds with a 3-and-out and an interception that was returned for a touchdown, and then closing the deal out with a turnover on downs and a sack as the time expired. So I think that late third quarter, early fourth quarter is, if you just watched the second half of this game, you'd get a real sense for how this game was decided. But I think that all throughout the game, it's important to understand how well this defense played. If you don't see that first half and how they respond to those big plays with their backs against the wall, you don't fully understand what it means for what they did in the fourth quarter to seal the deal. So, just overall, so many things you could say about this game. I could talk forever about this game, but defense wins championships, and so does Stetson Bennett. That's what I called rest and react. And ultimately, the defense did their job to keep Georgia in this game. They did their job to seal the deal on this game. And in between, Stetson Bennett did his job in putting Georgia on the board with those 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. I think you mentioned that you're glad we're not talking about the officiating. That would have definitely been if that had been a deciding play, as it could have been in that game, there would have been a lot to be said about that. And let's call it what it was too. Look, Georgia did not play their cleanest game of the year by any stretch of the imagination. It was a very heavily penalized game from the Georgia perspective. I think it was in the double digits, right?
Yeah.
13,
Yeah.
Something like that.
I think it was like 12, 13, something like that.
Yeah. This was uncharacteristically undisciplined comparatively to what we've seen, I guess, the rest of the season when it comes to Georgia. And quite frankly, that's the kind of thing that normally costs teams against Alabama. That's normally, you put yourself behind the sticks with penalties, and, you put yourself in bad situations. You kept putting the defense out there too in that first half. And it really did not feel like Georgia could get any momentum rolling. Not that Alabama was, but Alabama was hitting some plays. Georgia came out those first 2 drives and looked totally inept. And I think a lot of people came out of those first couple of drives saying, "Oh my God, it's happening again! It's the SEC championship all over." And that was it. Like you said, it's a testament to the defense that they were able to weather that storm, that they were able to be put back on the field and back in the arena so many times and walk away with what ended up being a W in the big sense, obviously, but also so many times just being able to win the battle and control what was happening on the field. And like you said, keeping guys out of the end zone. I mean, even when Alabama got it down, so close a couple of times, Georgia was able to hold them up. One of the things that will stand out about that game to me for sure was I think it was Channing maybe missed an assignment, and Nakobe Dean just tore into him. I mean, looked like Kirby Smart getting after him out there, and
they call him a coach on the field for the reason.
And Channing bounces back next play and has a huge sack on Bryce Young. And so
third down to keep him out of the end zone.
Couldn't have been more poetic for how it played out. But like I said, it really was a tale of 2 halves. Georgia offensively stank in the first half. Alabama wasn't great, but you knew that at some point Alabama was going to hit a play. You had to be concerned if Georgia was going to do that because of what you'd seen in the SEC championship. There was a potential that might not happen. But they're able to control the flow. And like I said, the penalties, to me, if you have double-digit penalties and a turnover against Alabama, typically that's a recipe for a loss against Alabama, I would say. Now, simultaneously, though, Alabama normally does not have a lot of not a lot of their own turnovers, and they certainly had a couple of those on Saturday. Ended up being huge. Credit to Chris Smith, in my opinion, the player of the game. I thought Chris played a tremendous game. I know Lewis was awarded the defensive player of the game, and look, the argument's certainly there for him as well. I mean, there were a lot of guys who made a lot of really impactful plays over the course of that night. Channing, another guy I mentioned, Nakobe was all over the field as usual. Lewis kind of, I forget the play, but I forget the context of what down it was, but it was that one where he just made up so much ground. I mean, it was a perfect read and just absolutely flew to the ball, blew it up.
That was a second down.
I believe so, but it was about to go for a big chunk.
Yeah, and then I think Chris Smith was there on the pass breakup. It was either Chris Smith or William Poole on the pass breakup on that next play.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, you've mentioned both those guys.
William Poole, great night for William Poole, a man who, not that I don't know that many people thought he would even get a shot at redemption after the SEC championship, and sure enough, has a chance to come out and do a great job for Georgia.
And if we're talking about redemption from the SEC championship, Keely Ringo, I mean, another guy that just got absolutely burned in the SEC championship game on Jamison Williams' longest touchdown of the game. And how does he respond? Well, he seals the deal on Georgia's national championship. Takes the interception as Kirby's saying, get down. He takes it to the house. He's got points on his mind. So I think that there's a lot of guys, that we could talk about in conversation for player of the game. You're giving it to Chris Smith, in your opinion, the DawgsHQ Dawg Walk Talk player MVP. Jake Roos, you're giving it to your vote goes to Chris Smith.
I am giving it to Chris Smith. His interception was really big. It was a very timely interception. I also thought it was kind of poetic that it had happened after the Clemson game where he sealed the deal with the interception there. Had a couple big pass breakups, just made some crucial plays. And, a guy that let's call it what it is. I think, overlooked in a lot of cases. And listen, Chris is not the biggest guy on the secondary. He's not the fastest guy in the secondary. He's not the guy who's going to be drafted the highest out of that secondary, but he's been a solid contributor and he's been around for a long time. And you could tell that a lot of that experience paid off on Monday night. And so for me, Chris Smith, my defensive player of the game. You going, where are you going with that?
Well, okay. So I'm not giving this player defensive player of the game in my opinion, but for a lot of those same reasons that you just mentioned with Chris Smith, he was so incredibly valuable. A guy that, like you said, wasn't, like you said with Smith, isn't the star of this defense, wasn't the most highly recruited of the group. He's not your playmaker. He's not going to go be an NFL star, but he ends up leading the team in sacks this year, and that's Robert Beal. After entering the transfer portal, flirting with the idea of leaving Georgia, decides to stick around, and it pays off for him. So I'm not giving him my defensive player of the game. But that certainly came to mind as you were talking about Chris there. If I had to give out a defensive player of the game, there's so many guys you could give it to. And I think that's what makes this game so special. I want to say too, and I mentioned this yesterday, it was a performance that was very indicative of what Georgia's done defensively all year. You saw almost week in and week out that they were rotating lead tacklers, guys getting sacked. It was a collective defense. It wasn't like there was a star. Now there were some individual awards handed out. Nakobe Dean obviously, pulls down a butt kiss. You get a Nagurski for Jordan Davis, as well as the Lombardi, I think it was. I forget what the Outland.
other one.
Outland.
The Outland. That's
as
right.
As well as the I thought it was
not the Nagurski.
I thought it was Bednarik that he won.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, Nagurski went to Will Anderson, which and the Heisman finalist was Aiden Hutchinson. So in a year of defensive players,
you'll have to excuse me. I haven't slept much, so I don't remember postseason trophies very much. You had a couple guys who won individual awards, but it was a collective effort from this defense pretty well throughout the season. Like I said, each guy sort of had up his moment where he stepped up. Got Darion Kendrick in the Michigan game, for example, Nakobe in the first Clemson game. Channing had that great game against Tennessee. Quay Walker had big moments. It was I thought that was what was cool about the performance on Monday night, was that, it was really reflective of how Georgia had played defense all year.
Yeah. Well, and so another thing that I think was reflective of the way Georgia played all year long, and I'll give my defensive player of the game award to Jalen Carter. Didn't tear up the stat sheet, but made some of the most impactful plays in that game. He had
a crucial penalty though. Well, that penalty was not a timely penalty.
Yeah.
I mean, but no, I'm not discounting that at all. What I'm saying is he had a moment, and it could have gone badly, and there were a couple of those through the night. But he's able to rebound and then come up with some massive plays.
Yeah, I think the block kick is huge. Anytime you can keep Alabama off the board, that's big. And I think the fact that he was in there on the Zamir White touchdown, Georgia's first of the game. I think like we've said, and we'll transition over to the offense here in a sec. But like we've said, this defense was one of several stars. That there's not one particular guy. There's not a Roquan Smith on this defense. I mean, maybe you could make the case for Nakobe, being that kind of central figure, the leader. Sure. But I think from the perspective of, if you look at the stat sheet, it's all over the board. You've got different players, that are making impacts. And so I think that's what made this defense so special.
Yeah, it was huge. It was huge. It really was. Flipping it over to the offensive side of the ball, like we've said throughout, kind of a mixed bag performance, definitely two very different halves for the offense. But I thought it was really again, very cool to hear Jamari Sawyer talk about in the post game, essentially that he went to Kirby and said, look, you got to put it on us, put it on our backs. We can go out here. We can grind this thing down. And, they made a change on the offensive line in that second half, switched Jamari over to guard. Broderick Jones bumps out to left tackle, has himself a big night, according to Pro Football Focus. Jamari, just the leader. And I mean, a testament to him, man. Another, he comes off the Aiden Hutchinson game and then comes into this one. And in the middle of the game is just, hey, can you step over here and do a little something else that you hadn't been really doing all year? Oh yeah, sure. Why not? I'll take it on. Stetson Bennett, the MVP of the game from the offensive perspective, and probably rightfully so. Mailman certainly delivered, and we're going to talk a bunch about Stetson, I'm sure, in a moment. But I guess taking him off the board, for me, Brock Bowers' catch was huge, and it was cool to see him get to do that. You wondered, when was it going to happen? When was Bowers going to kind of burst through and make his play? I mean, he even did that in the SEC championship game when not a lot of guys had a moment. Brock had a moment. But aside from Stetson, to me, it's A.D. Mitchell. That was one of the greatest catches. That's one of those, to me, the interception is the play, right? That's going to be on every highlight reel forever, and probably will be at the tail end of everyone next season. It'll be it's going to be what blows the roof off of Sanford Stadium every time they play it. But the second biggest play for me, it was A.D. Mitchell's, and just because of what a grown man catch it was. Now, all credit to Stetson too. A tremendously thrown ball and just a heck of a dime by him. But AD really got up and got that thing and had to wrestle it away and get physical for it. And, that's a big sign for that kid, moving forward. He showed flashes throughout the year. He had some games and some moments, but none bigger than that, in my opinion. So I'm going to give my offensive player, I think, to A.D. Mitchell, just because of how impactful that moment was.
Yeah, I mean, you absolutely could, and I probably would had you not taken him. But I'll give mine elsewhere and give myself a little pat on the back here as well. Looking at the three offensive players of the game that I had mentioned, to watch, it was Stetson Bennett, obvious reasons there, and he takes home the offensive MVP of the game. Jamari Sawyer, like you just said, had a big game for him, and being able to move all around and help the offensive line seal the deal. But if you read that, you probably know where I'm going with this, and it's James Cook. Has the run of the night for Georgia. It was 67 yards, set up it really got Georgia going offensively.
Yes.
In this second half. You had the big play from George Pickens in the first half, but I think that they didn't do much with it. They settled for a field goal there.
Yes.
And so when you start talking about Georgia getting touchdowns, it starts with James Cook's run, and that set things up for Zamir. He goes for 77 yards on the ground, has another 15 through the air, 2 catches there. Including an 11-yard reception. So I think that doesn't quite get to the 100-yard total that he's topped in total yardage a couple of times this season, and a couple of times in his career as well. But I think that when you talk about Georgia offensively, needing a big game from their running backs, needing the ability to run the ball and control the line of scrimmage, I thought that they would probably do it better early on, but they did it when it mattered. And that was, the running backs, the combo of Zamir White and James Cook. But really, to me, I'll give my MVP there to Cook for getting things started with that long run.
Yeah, I mean, great pick, no doubt about it, and made me look like an idiot too, because I had just finished typing on Twitter and just said Georgia's defense needs to grind it out here, eat some time. This defense needs a break, and they've earned it. And here comes James Cook just scurrying down the field and kind of busting this thing open. But it, like you said, it was kind of the spark everybody needed. I think it kind of lit everybody back up and, puts them down there. You scored the touchdown, and it kind of gets everything rolling again. Stetson Bennett is named Orange Bowl National Championship Offensive Player of the Game. And we took him off our board for obvious reasons, because that's just too easy of a pick if we're going to do it. But, man, what can you say? I've been smiling a lot just thinking about Stetson, man. And I feel good for the guy, man. It's hard not to. I mean, if you don't, you're a hater. I'm sorry. I'm calling everybody out. If you still hate Stetson Bennett, you're a hater, because Stetson Bennett lived the dream that every Georgia football fan kid who's 7 years old is playing in the backyard, throwing the ball around, wants to do. And he did it in a frame that nobody thought he could do it. And he did it with opportunities nobody thought he'd get. And he did it at a place that nobody ever thought he should be. And I don't know, man. It's Rudy, except he won a national championship and he started the whole damn game. I mean, he's just the kid is it's just an unbelievable story.
Yeah, and I'll add this to your hater comment. You're not just a hater of Stetson Bennett, you're a hater of Georgia. If that
I would agree.
Because for all those people that have said all along, that JT Daniels should be in the game, that Stetson doesn't deserve to be in this spot, that Kirby is crazy for playing a former walk-on over a former 5-star, Stetson just all season long, just put that on the back burner and went out and played football. And it's clearly a game that he loves to play, because, if you go listen to his interview on Good Morning America, he's
I'll be honest. I don't know that anybody picked that quote up from the Good Morning America interview, because that was not the takeaway anybody got from the Good Morning America interview. Yeah. It was more that Stetson was probably rolling with a BAC that would have made him illegal to drive at the time.
Yeah. Let's hope the good old Claude Felton drove Stetson to that media availability.
I bet Kirby put him on his back and took him over there.
No, but I think overall, you can tell how much this sport means to him. I think that, one of the things that has impressed me about Stetson the most is he's a thinker. He thinks about what he's going to say, which as a media member, I really respect that, because a lot of guys just kind of say a whole lot of nothing. But Stetson says, when Stetson speaks, it has value, because he really puts, time into what he's going to say. He speaks from the heart, I think. And that's, it's not just what comes straight to his head. He really digs down, thinks about what he's saying and what it means to him and his story. For forever now, Stetson Bennett is linked to the University of Georgia football program. He is the quarterback that brought Georgia a national championship, which I am laughing as I say that, because you would have been crazy. You would have been crazy to predict that in 2017, in 2018, in 2019, in really any of these years. You would be crazy to be the person saying, the thing that blows me away the most about Stetson is that if you look at his Georgia career, no, not once has he come into a season as the starting quarterback. And now he's ending this season, Georgia's magical season, as the starting quarterback of a national championship winning team. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't have, it's not just this year, and it's not just under Kirby Smart. The way Georgia has recruited the position of quarterback over the years, Eric Zier, Mike Bobo, Aaron Murray, Jacob Eason, Jake Fromm, Justin Fields, I mean, just guys, Quincy Carter, DJ Shockley waited his turn, Matthew Stafford, the first overall pick in the NFL draft. All of these guys, Georgia has a reputation of putting out, great quarterbacks and has had some great collegiate quarterbacks. You would have never in your life bet that a walk-on was going to be the guy to get them over the hump. And, like I said, man, I mean,
that's like saying Jake Roos or Palmer Thombs is going to be your national championship starting quarterback.
Look, and now maybe it's possible. Who knows? I guess
you still got eligibility left.
Can we eliminate any possibilities now? I think so. I think I could get into the clearinghouse. So I mean, you can't. I told you this after the game, and I told a bunch of people this. You could not have written that script and presented it to a Hollywood studio because they would have said, this is far too cliche. We can't put something like this out because it doesn't make sense. That of course everyone wants that to happen. Of course everyone wants to see that person win, but in real life that doesn't happen. Except it did, and it did on Monday, and it did for Georgia. One of the more hard luck teams of the last 25 to 41 years, if you want to consider it that way. So many close calls. Like you said, you go back to the previous national championship experience, the 2012 SEC championship game, Mark Richt in that 08 Sugar Bowl against Hawaii. I mean, there were teams, man. There are teams that have come through this school that had the playoff been in place would probably have I don't know. I'm not going to say they would have won the national championship. You can never predict anything like that. They would have been in the playoff and they'd have been in the hunt. They'd have had an opportunity to play for it rather than having the computers and the polls decide it. But that wasn't the case. And even with all those great players and all those great teams and all those NFL pros who came through, Stetson Bennett's the one, man. He's the chosen one. He's like the golden child, I guess. You go seek him out, and he may be the next Dalai Lama for all we know. We can't be sure about anything when it comes to Stetson Bennett, because his story truly unbelievable. And listen, as a journalist, I know I'm not supposed to care who wins the game, and ultimately I don't, but I'm happy for Stetson Bennett. I'm thrilled for him, to be honest with you. I think it may be the coolest story in college football history.
Yeah, I mean,
in my opinion,
it's definitely up there. It's
got to be the most unbelievable.
Yeah. Not much else you can say about that. I'll try to do my best as I write a Stetson story, in the hours after this. But it's hard to put into words what Stetson Bennett has done, in blocking out all the noise, all the hate, all the doubt.
And you saw it on his face, man. When after the pick happened, I mean, he just crumbled, dude. I mean, emotionally, you could see all that weight. He had carried it all year. And listen, he can talk about that flip phone all he wanted. That kid knew what people were saying about him. Okay. That kid understood what people thought about him and about the performances that he had put on and what he was and what he wasn't and what he could and couldn't do. And I'll tell you this, that didn't start at Georgia. That's been all that kid's life, man. I'm sure there have been a million people in that kid's life who said, you're too small to play quarterback. You're not good enough to play quarterback. It felt like all of that weight, you got to see it fall off of that kid. And I think that's where a lot of that emotion came from for her.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I guess like I said, I mean, I don't know, parting thoughts here, Palm. I mean, it was Indianapolis. I thought was a cool city. Overall, I was worried about the weather, but had some great food. St. Elmo's shrimp cocktail was awesome. The host committee they were super cool to the media, and I think the fans really enjoyed the stadium. The stadium was beautiful. A lot of great seats in that stadium. We were laughing after the game. I forget who said it, but it may have been you. But I can't recall. But somebody was saying, Georgia fans now. I mean, there are going to be people who make pilgrimages, Georgia fans, to Indianapolis to go take a picture by Lucas Oil Stadium just to say they were at the stadium, and that's hard to believe because they ain't going there for the scenic beauty. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my parting thoughts to this season, this game, you would be, just it's incredible. When you look back at this season as a whole, some of the symmetry between the way that first game went, when you started to feel like this team had the potential to be magical, something special, to the way that it ended in Indianapolis. First score of the year, Chris Smith touchdown. Who's right there blocking for him? Keely Ringo. Last score of the year, Keely Ringo pick 6. Who's there blocking for him? Chris Smith.
Dan Jackson getting his teeth rattled out of his head.
Yeah. First catch of the year, Brock Bowers. Last catch of the year, Brock Bowers.
Yeah.
First sack of the season, Nolan Smith. What does he do to end the game? Gets the last sack of the season. So there's a lot of great symmetry to this season. You can't put it into words. There's nothing that we can say, we can write to change the way that this game, this season played out for Georgia. There's nothing that we can say that does better justice to it than just having watched it the entire way. So I mean, if you're listening to this show, I promise you probably have watched the game. You probably watched it more than once or twice. I feel like you probably watched it all, but I feel like this season, as a whole, there were a lot of things that were very special, a lot of great stories told. The senior class, I think that there's a lot of great leaders on this team, a lot of great seniors, a lot of great guys that have been around this program and understand what it means. I think that from the guys that are from the state of Georgia, they understand what it means to have grown up a Georgia fan or at least grown up around Georgia fans and have seen the hardship, the 2012 season, the ending to that game. I mean, we heard Stetson talk about that yesterday. And they understand, what this means. I think the guys that came to Georgia, from out of state, you were asking the question after the game to believe it was Zamir White, Jordan Davis, James Cook, N'Kobe Dean. Mm-hmm. Those guys came to Georgia. It's not their home state school. It's not in their backyard. They made the choice to come to Georgia to accomplish something, and they accomplished that. So I think that when you look at this season, like I said, there's a lot of leaders, a lot of names, a lot of faces, a lot of stars that were a big part of this, and I think that is what makes this team so special to Georgia fans. Not just the way that it ended. That's a huge factor, but the way the ride of it definitely makes it special too. And to wrap it up by beating Alabama, the only team that beat you this season, and the team that has given you the most trouble over the last, definitely over Kirby Smart's career, but really since 2007, over the last decade plus. They've given everybody trouble. They've been the kings of college football. They're the standard that you try and meet when you're building a program. But to beat them makes it even sweeter.
Yep. Yeah. I don't, please don't steal all of our end of season recap. We have to still probably do a couple more of these podcasts along the way. So save a little bit of that. But yeah,
there's plenty to talk about from draft decisions to transfer portal to coaching changes.
We got another signing period coming up. I mean,
we got to review the all American games under.
What did I tell you? And what did I tell you in the box? I said everybody will get 24 hours on this one, and then it'll all start over again. And we didn't even get 24 hours yesterday before some of the first transfer decisions were announced. So
yeah,
hey. Kudos to Amir Speed, a guy who put in a lot of work at Georgia, and wish him the best. I hope he finds a good spot, because never heard anybody say a bad word about Amir Speed.
Same with Jalen Johnson.
Yep, absolutely. Both guys deserve credit, and best of luck to James Cook, who's announced that he's going to the NFL as well. Not a huge surprise to me, based on everything he was kind of saying, even going back into the Orange Bowl, like, hey, this is the last ride. He wasn't really
even senior day. He said stuff along those lines. So yeah. Not a surprise at all. I think that my prediction for this decision season is that it's probably going to go very differently than last one. I think that and that's another thing that I'll add to what made this team so special, was that a lot of these guys made the choice to come back in search of this. Yep. Nakobe Dean didn't have a choice, but James Cook did, and he decided to come back. Jordan Davis did. He decided to come back. Devontae Wyatt is a kid that probably shouldn't be on the stage, but he is. And he decided to come back and accomplish something special. That definitely makes it special. The way that things went last, the players talk about after Cincinnati, that's when this season started. That's when they realized, the off-season workouts were harder than they had ever been before. The connection of this team, I think that they were connected within the team, but I think they were also connected to the community. That made it special. So my prediction with going into decision season is that we're going to see a lot of guys leaving, and that's what you expect, because it doesn't get any better than winning a national championship. I mean, what are you coming back for? To win another one? If you've got a choice, yeah. But if you have a choice and you've got a strong foundation set for going pro, especially if you're a senior and you're choosing whether to you've graduated or whatever it may be, you're choosing whether to come back and use that last year of eligibility just to play more ball, or at the collegiate level, or go pro. I think a lot of these guys are going to be deciding to hang up the cleats in red and black and turn their focus towards getting back to Indianapolis and performing in the combine.
Sure. Or like you said, I mean, I think that we'll see some transfers along the way, maybe even a healthy number. And
hell, it wouldn't surprise me if there's some guys that just decide to hang up football.
I would agree. I mean, ride off into the sunset, have a good time. Listen, I'll tell you this: you might as well go ahead and if you're gonna do that, I'd say put up a Venmo page, send in $200, and you can buy yourself a little house on the east side of Athens. And I promise you're not going to have to buy groceries or meals the rest of your life. So it's going to be pretty easy sledding for the next little bit for you if you were on this team, and certainly happy for those guys. So all right, I think that's it for us. We've rambled long enough. I'm sure we'll talk about this again very soon. Probably a lot moving forward. But Georgia, your national champions in 2021. Soak it in, Bulldog Nation. You waited a long time for it, and kudos to you for weathering the storms. And that being said, I'm Jake Roos. He's Palmer Toms. This has been another edition of Dawg Walk Talk, presented to you by DawgsHQ.